Rich is on vacation, but never fear, Erick Simpson is filling in to discuss news from Barracuda and Ninja One, plus touch on helping SMBs leverage IT to drive growth and more. Plus a special guest interview with ChannelPro's new event content director and community manager that you won't want to miss. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 226, Fun Size Snicker-Nugget. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode number 226. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for folks out there like you. And when I say you, who are you? Why you need me to tell you who you are, I don't know, because you should know who you are. You've been with yourself your whole life. But just in case you don't know, you're a VAR, you're an IT integrator, you're an IT consultant, you're a managed service provider, you're a managed security services, MSSP kind of person. If your job involves technology and it involves other businesses and like putting solutions and monitoring and stuff like that with other businesses, you are in the right place. If you don't do any of those things, you're going to learn a lot about what MSPs and all of this different acronyms I said, what they do day in and day out. So welcome one and all. This is where I would usually say, and joining me every week is the man of the hour, Mr. Rich Freeman, but he's not here. He is on vacation this week. So fortunately, you will not have to listen to me ramble on by myself because boy, that would be an interesting show. But we have someone here who is going to help fill the shoes of Mr. Freeman. And it's a person I'm very excited to always have on when he's here. He is our guest host today. That is a man who built and sold one of the first pure play MSPs in the industry. He is a technology, business, and channel growth expert, influencer, thought leader, speaker, and author with 4 best-selling books and 50 white papers to his credit. Plus, he also co-hosts the ChannelPro Weekly the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup podcast with Mr. Freeman. Please welcome Erick Simpson. Welcome, Erick.
Hey, Matt, thanks so much for inviting me. And boy, you set me up here. Those are big shoes to fill, So I'll do my best at being your co-pilot during today's podcast in the absence of the amazing Rich Freeman, who is, as you mentioned, my co-pilot on the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup podcast. I hope he's enjoying the sun and the quiet wherever he is in the world on his vacation.
I know. Can you believe that he ditched us or ditched me anyway? He didn't ditch you. Well, he did ditch you, but did you guys do a roundup in advance for this week?
We did. We pre-recorded a roundup in advance. In fact, we did that at the Ingram Micro Cloud Summit 2022. So Rich and I both were there. I was presenting a session and on a panel. And as always, Rich was interviewing all kinds of, high-level executives from Ingram and different vendors, as well as, MSPs, attendees, VARs, solution providers, bringing back all that great information that the channel pros need to know about and reporting it at ChannelPro Network.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm glad that audience won't miss a beat, and they won't miss a beat here this week because you graciously stepped up to do that, and it is. Interestingly, it is big shoes to fill, even though like Rich is kind of a small guy. So I don't know how he ended up with such big feet, but
I don't know I don't know the formula there, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be maybe your straight man, maybe your funny man a little bit, but don't expect the depth of knowledge and intimacy with the stories that normally are covered by Rich from me. I'll just I'll try to swing for the fence.
That's right. We're gonna do our best here, folks. We've been without Rich before. It's always gone pretty well. I think with you here, it's gonna go also really well. And we'll preview kind of what's gonna be coming up ahead. But first, not everybody may have caught an episode where you've been on or watches the 5-Minute Roundup. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Well, in a nutshell, I'm an engineer by trade. I decided to exit the enterprise where I started as a lowly. Sweeping floors, emptying the trash, learning stuff, and then picking up technology, jumped into a help desk role. I'm kidding, right? So help desk. And then my journey led me to CIO, CTO roles. I decided I want to start my own practice. In 97, launched an IT practice with a business partner. We transitioned that into one of the first MSPs in the industry in 2004, and then sold it at the end of 2007. I then co-founded MSP University, where we worked with tens of thousands of IT providers looking to transform their businesses into more of a recurring revenue model. So did that for a bunch of years. We did a bunch of boot camps and and workshops all over the world, online training. And it took the wind out of me, Matt. I exited all of that a few years ago, and now I just work with IT providers directly doing coaching and consulting, and then I work with channel vendors and distributors. I do channel strategy, I do channel partner enablement, recruitment services, and I also train internal account management teams at vendors and distributors, as well as for MSPs too. So I know it just it's an amazing journey. And if you'd asked me, 15 years ago what I thought I'd be doing, I certainly would have not responded anything like that.
So you're still a busy guy, though. You do an awful lot of stuff, and you've written a lot of books, and you do a lot of speaking engagements and thought leadership kind of stuff. Tell us about some of your books that you've written.
Oh, wow. So some of these are getting a little long in the tooth, right? But they're all best practices based. And I do have a couple other ones that are on my list to get done at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But, I wrote probably the first book about building an MSP practice. I think I beat my buddy Carl Palachuk just slightly a little bit, because he's also a very prolific author, friend of the show, friend of the channel. The Guide to a Successful Managed Services Practice was published in 2006. I went on to do the best IT sales and marketing book ever after that, the best knock and service desk operations book ever, and then there was the best IT service delivery book ever. So just all focused around what I know. I'm not, writing Harry Potter books, Matt. I don't know that stuff. I mean, I'm not, I wish I could, have some of that J.K. Rowling money, right? But you can write about what I know and my journey through my career. And it's all been very focused around, tactics and strategies for delivering excellent service, building successful, profitable businesses, and just enjoying every minute of it along the way.
Well, hey, that could be a fantasy series someday, though. You could mix a little bit of the magical world of Harry Potter with the business building expertise of Erick Simpson, and you could have a character like Voldemort trying to take over, some MSP.
The MSP that lived.
one that I love. You see, there you could get something out of that. I think that's a good direction. Very cool. You also do the 5-minute roundup with Mr. Rich Freeman here. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my goodness, we've done well over 200 episodes. One thing that I did not expect in doing the podcast with Rich, I'd never done a podcast before. You guys have been doing the ChannelPro Weekly podcast forever. And, Rich asked me to, co-host a podcast with him. And I think we're probably in the, over 200 episodes. And I think we've only missed, kind of guide me on this, maybe 3 weeks where we were both on vacation or both doing or something, holiday or something. And we decided, we're just going to take that week off without pre-recording something. So it's been quite a journey. And what I love about the 5-minute roundup podcast is not only do we cover like one breaking story every episode, every week, but we also introduce a business tip of the week. So I'll provide a business tip of the week for partners, no matter what their role is in an IT practice or an organization or even the enterprise. And then we always end with a quick little funny humor segment. So it's a fun-sized Snicker-Nugget, right? It's not a giant, huge podcast, that takes a lot of time to invest yourself in. You sit down and prepare and get your drink and you were getting into your podcast. It's one of those that we wanted to keep very light, fresh, and topical. And so we knock those out every single week, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, it's a great little show. I try to catch as many of them I can. It is a little longer than 5 minutes, just a little warning for most people that are out there. It's usually more in the 10 to 15 minute mark, but it is well worth your time. You get a lot out of it in a real quick dose. And of course, we always love folks to subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly as well. It's a little bit of a longer show that you can listen to passively while you go about your day. But we dive into a lot here, and I don't think there's any argument that we have some of the best interviews and guests on this show of any podcast on the channel. So it is a great honor to have everybody joining us for that and for the 5-minute roundup. Check it out if you have not done so yet. Erick, we've got even without Rich, we've got a lot of things we're going to dive into. We're going to talk about a story about Bitdefender. We're going to talk about a story about Ninja One. We'll dive into that briefly. As Erick warned, we probably do not know these news stories as well as Rich does, but we will do our best to pick out the interesting factoids with all of them. We're going to talk about two other articles that hit the site. Probably these might have been in our latest magazine issue that recently hit the site. We'll talk about those if you didn't catch them there. There's one about helping SMBs leverage IT to drive growth. And we're going to talk about 3 tips for understanding and optimizing document migration. 2 very interesting articles that you might be interested in. We'll talk about those a little bit. We also have a guest interview coming up, and this is kind of a different one and a fun one. So we're going to be talking to Jeff O'Hare, who is actually on the ChannelPro Network team. He's our new community manager and event content director, I believe is his title. But he's doing a lot of really cool stuff with the ChannelPro audience, and you might have seen him at an event if you've been at an event or two. And it's a really good interview. You'll absolutely want to check it out and learn more about him and what he's doing. So definitely stick around for that. And then, of course, in part 3, I got a little fun lined up for Erick. He doesn't know what it is yet, so he'll just have to hold on and see what comes later on in the show. But that'll be a lot of fun. Speaking of events, Erick, ChannelPro does have an event coming up rapidly. In fact, it's coming up June 6th. So here in just a couple weeks, we will be in Dallas, Texas. I'm trying to get the exact info. I probably should have pulled this up before. So June 6th and 7th. So we have a pre-day event on the 6th with Dell, and I believe with Trend Micro as well. And then the main day event is on June 7th, and it's in Dallas, North Grapevine, Texas. I hear it's very close to the airport, like 5 minutes from the DFW airport. So
easy in and out. Mm-hmm.
Easy to get to, easy in and out. Absolutely come and check that show out. We've got a lot of really great things that we're having. We're going to have a cocktail party on the 6th after the Trend Micro and Dell pre-days. But we've got some really cool sessions for this year. One of them is called the Security Slam, where we're going to listen to various security experts kind of detail some stories about things that they've seen, like life stories about incredible hacks or customer errors and things like that, high stakes incident response, and then we will have those kind of rated, and we'll all vote to see who tells the best story. We're going to be learning about how to win with Microsoft Azure and how to make money with Azure, so you'll absolutely want to see that. We have the employee recruitment dating game, because obviously, as we all know, getting and maintaining or retaining employees right now is really difficult to do. And there's a lot of people having trouble hiring. So we're going to talk about some different tactics in a fun way on how to hire and help get recruitment going in the current climate. We're going to talk about social media sales strategies. That's a really cool session that you won't want to miss. And of course, our showcase kind of the year is the MSP managed services strategy survivor session, which is kind of like themed like the MSP or the Survivor game show, which is really fun. And we're talking about M&A and all kinds of cool stuff there. So, Erick, have you caught any of our shows this year?
Not this year. I'm slowly getting back into feeling good about traveling. Slowly getting back into that. I think a lot of us are ready to go. I mean, in fact, the Cloud Summit was the first event that I've traveled to this year. So, long time coming, and I have attended many of the ChannelPro events, and they are just jam-packed with value. And hats off to you and the team, Matt, for continuing to evolve and try to make them more interesting, more engaging, and deliver tons and tons of value for attendees and for sponsors. I mean, there's not a show like it in the channel.
Well, it's high praise from Erick Simpson, and I only gave him money in like the 4 digits in order to say all that. No, I'm just kidding. That's all on his own. Didn't pay him a dime. But folks, how can you go and register? How can you take part of this? If you're anywhere in the Dallas area, you absolutely have to be there. Go to channelproforum.com/event. No, sorry. Hold on. Wait. Let me do that. channelproforum.com/Dallas. I'm getting my URLs mixed up, but go to that one. That'll take you right to the registration page for the Dallas event. Use promo code CPVIP to register. That'll get you in the door for free. But believe me, you're going to get a lot out of it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell, hit the subscribe button, hit every button you see, and you will scan that QR code. It'll again take you right to the registration page, and we will see you all in Dallas. Make sure you don't miss it. It is definitely something you don't want to miss. All right. Well, Erick, we're going to dive into the news as best we can and talk about Bitdefender first. So back in 2020, Bitdefender launched a MDR service that combines solutions from Gravity Zone and with some other outsourced incident response assistance from security operations centers back then. And it's something that they've had for a couple of years. Well, now they're developing a pay-as-you-go version of that managed detection and response service that's specifically targeted at MSPs and the recurring revenue model. So I guess previous to this, you'd have to kind of go upfront with an annual or a multi-year contract in order to use this. But now they're doing a pay-as-you-go version, which is kind of interesting. So it's nice because I'm sure a lot of MSPs, even you back in the day, didn't like being locked into 3-year terms on stuff like this, right?
Yeah, Matt, back in the day, I mean, in fact, when we were trying to do managed services, it was made more difficult because the pricing models weren't, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, MSP friendly, right? We'd have to purchase a block of licenses up front and things like that. And, some of these, were so just out of our, reach at that point. Like, can't buy 1,000 licenses when you have 20 customers, right? So, the evolution that we've all gone through and the vendors and distributors, have helped, meet that demand for MSPs who are now really selling services on a consumption model. And the more and more that we migrate to the cloud and we migrate to online services, that are consumption based, like Azure, like M365 and all these things. It's nice to see that the vendors had tried to help the MSPs by adapting their pricing models to suit, right? Because, it's easier to price when you know what your per user costs are. And sometimes when you've got, let's say, in my example, we had maybe 20 customers. Let's say they had 100 let's say they had 10 users each, right? So 200, I'm buying 1,000 licenses. How do I figure out what my true cost is? Because I've got to defray the cost of those other 800 licenses or whatever, right? So, I like the fact that Bitdefender has taken this MDR solution and joined, the options that MSPs have, because it just makes it easier for them to say yes now. And, to provide a valuable service to their customers, a high level service that maybe in the past was more relegated to mid or enterprise opportunities just because perhaps of the way it was priced.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it looks like the pricing is flexible as far as deployment goes. They say that you can, you don't have to apply it to everybody. You can apply it to only portions of the customer base, which sounds like it's good. So you don't have to turn it on for everybody. That seems nice. And it looks like they've got a couple different tiers on this. There's a premium package that includes threat management, targeted threat hunting, tailored response playbooks, and other features. And the enterprise package adds risk-based threat hunting, brand and IP protection, dark web monitoring, domain registration monitoring, and other stuff. All sounds really good. We're going to put a link to the article in the show notes for episode 226. So if you're on your phone, you can open up your phone. Usually the links are right in there. If they're not, you can go to channelpronetwork.com, find the show sheet for episode 226, and all the links to all these stories that we're going to talk about are going to be in that page there. So you can kind of read along and get all the details and all the other links off to get more information. So go and check that out. If you're on YouTube, again, hit subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff, but also open up the description area there and you'll see the links to these stories in there so you can read along as we go through it. So we're going to move on to our next news story, which is from Ninja One. And they've apparently released a latest edition of their growing managed services security suite. So version 5.3.2 is the new version, which is due to reach North American users sometime in mid to late next month. It includes a whole bunch of new features, right? There's an enhanced RMM scripting library with an initial batch of user-ready entries that technicians can customize to their needs. They can also schedule scripts to run automatically on startup, at login, when offline devices reconnect. The new release also includes an enhanced connection to the ConnectWise managed PSA solution. So if you're looking to have better integration with ConnectWise, it looks like you're going to have that in there. There's going to be some more software integrations, Akelo, Blue Cloud PSA, Halo PSA, There's all bunch, so lots of new features. So let's just kind of summarize the story, Eric. New version of software, more features, which is what we expected. So I don't know if that's news, but it seems like there's a lot in this. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I like the fact that right out of the gate, it's all about not just the feature and benefits, but it's all about the integration, right? Because as we know, MSPs today leverage 5 to 10, maybe more platforms to deliver service to their customers. And the better integrations that we have to connect these disparate platforms really increases our ability to become more efficient, more effective, visualize data from a reporting perspective much more effectively, and to use that data and those reports to prove value to our existing clients, to create, that, to strengthen that long-term bond that we have, that stickiness, and build trust and confidence in our clients moving forward. Not to mention the efficiency improvements that equal more net profit over time. And in today's day and age, Matt, where we're combating things like, the Great Resignation. I mean, almost every partner that I speak with or do polls when I'm doing webinars and things and ask, hey, have you been impacted at a webinar this morning? Have you been impacted in the last 12 months by having a technician leave, right? Go work for a client, go work for a competitor, go work for, an enterprise internal IT department. And, I was surprised at how many said yes. So some of the things that we can do to help combat it aren't simple. Well, one thing that's luring them away is better compensation, right? Well, how can an MSP, how can they compete when their team is being lured away with more money? Well, by being more efficient, more profitable, right? By pricing their solutions to maintain a target margin, right? So by integrating and adopting platforms that meet all of the things, just like in our last story, right? Things that are appealing to an MSP, not only from a pricing perspective, but also can integrate and maybe even eliminate some of those platforms, right? So we're reducing complexity. We're giving our technicians a better, I would say, a better work life, right? Because I think when technicians leave or when staff leaves, it's not simply about money. It's a point I made today in my webinar. I said, I think, that's just one of the straws on the camel's back. Some of these other things are, well, if the technician is having to wade through noise all day long, right, to get to do what they love to do, is to solve issues for clients or build solutions and things like that. If they're having to, manually enter data in multiple systems, for instance, or if they're having to do all kinds of admin work, or if there's not proper documentation, or if the platforms aren't integrated, or maybe the platforms just need new platforms, right? All of these additional straws on the camel's back make it easier for them to be lured away, right, by someone else by saying, oh, we've got all that stuff, right? And plus, we're going to give you this much of a salary increase. So, when they come to knock on their, on their manager's door or the business owner's door at the MSP, and they say, hey, here's my 2 weeks, right? At that point, Matt, maybe even offering them to match that salary isn't enough to keep them, right? Because they've got all this extra weight and, mental fatigue that they're dealing with every day. When they see, the grass might be greener over here, maybe making more money, or maybe it's maybe not a lot more money. But when they say, oh, we're using these best platforms and we're integrated and our team, does this, that is very attractive. So kind of guidance for our MSPs, right? Look at these platforms, document your products and, your processes, integrate your platforms, choose the right platforms, and give your technical team the work that they want to do, right? Don't saddle them with all this additional noise for too long. I get it, when you're building and things like that, everybody's kind of doing a lot of different jobs, but the more you can specialize and get them to do the thing that only they can do is close tickets and provide service and support to clients, and, get rid of some of this other noise on, lack of documentation, lack of a dedicated service dispatcher. They're having to cherry pick their own tickets, right? Those types of things, integration. I think you'll be better off or better positioned to, respond when somebody gets a job offer. I mean, I remember the days when my technicians in the MSP would let me know as soon as they got, an email from a headhunter or something. We had that kind of relationship. Hey, I'm getting pinged by these guys, and that would give me a little bit of, time to maybe, formulate a response or see what it's all about. Nowadays, with this mass, resignation thing, I think people just are looking for, opportunities to make a change more than they might be looking for opportunities to stay.
Absolutely. Well, and think about too, a lot of the things that these new tools and updates are doing is to automate a lot of the stuff that,
Yep.
that's like grunt work that nobody really wants to do, right? If it can be automated, why you have a human being doing it when they should be doing the things that only human beings can do? So,
right. And in some cases, we have the platforms, but we have not spent the time to configure them properly and maximize the automation. So the answer may be sitting right in front of us as MSPs, right? But, and hey, my hand's up. I'm guilty of this too. It's kind of like, oh, we have these platforms, but like my brain, we used maybe 10% of it, right? Until we got smart and said, oh my goodness, we can be leveraging this to our own benefit, and even, reducing the need to hire new technicians, right? We hear that all the time, we need to hire new technicians. Well, if we just automated and made things much more efficient, you could stave off hiring new technicians for a while and maybe reward your existing technicians with that, with that additional profit.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very good point. So not much more else to dive in here. There's a lot more that they talk about in this article. I will mention that because I think we talked about it on the show that that they put it, this system has like a ticketing system that they put out not all that long ago. I think it was rolled out last September. I believe we talked about that. Well, they got a bunch of revisions to that ticketing application in here as well, like the ability to assign contacts to devices and automatically assign tickets to owners. So that's pretty cool. There's other stuff in there as well. And they've are talking about some new patch management capabilities for macOS and Linux, which is in closed beta testing. I know that was something that people wanted. So lots of good stuff here. Go check out the article and get all the details, and check out all the links because it'll lots of information that we go there. But Eric, that's kind of all the news that we've got because our awesome newsman is kind of on vacay. So we don't have a ton of news in the site. I'm sure there will be a lot of news next week. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of news next week as we get that back. And we will have a show next week because we don't have an event next week. It's the week after we won't have a show. So lots of good stuff there. But we do have two other articles I know we wanted to touch on real quick. The first one is an article that hit the site by John Groves that talks about how SMBs leverage IT to drive growth. So basically it says that the MSPs who encourage their SMBs to invest in forward-looking security, storage, and data center solutions will help them be successful in the ever-changing landscape. So they talk about three major areas here where there's expected to be a lot of growth, which is security, no surprise there, right? Storage and data center. And it kind of details out some of the ways that you can help MSPs leverage technology in these different areas to, like, that security should go beyond just the perimeter, and they should take a role in like surveillance detection and find smaller businesses that think that the perspective is too strong to meet their needs, but it isn't. A trust but verify approach. They talk about scaling storage for the future, and that many in the SMB base kind of be tied on their own on-prem strategies, but now is a really good time, like everyone else, to start scaling out to the cloud. And there's a lot of different things in there that they can look at. They also talk about the final section, which is data center. And they're talking a lot about how data centers need to offer more flexible solutions. And there's a lot of information in here. I don't want to dive into all the details because it's a lot to read through and a lot to go through. But I know, Eric, you skimmed it real quick. Any good advice here that kind of stood out to you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, great article by Jonathan. And I think it just serves to reinforce the different buying perspectives of today's post-pandemic business owners, right? If you think about it, Matt, a couple of years ago, can we remember back before we had, lockdowns and no swabs and all this stuff? But back in those days, I was reading there's a survey by McKinsey, there's a survey by Microsoft, and there's a survey by one other think tank. The name escapes me now, but the survey by McKinsey talks about a poll that they did with business owners, enterprise C-level executives, and they said, hey, before the pandemic, what did you perceive your role to be as it relates to IT, internal IT? And, over 50%, the majority, said that, well, I see my role as cutting costs, right? So they were all about cutting. And those of us that, work in the mid-market and the enterprise know, sometimes those winning those opportunities comes down to what it costs. I mean, it's you try to build value and all that, but it's when you're in a competitive bid situation, it's about how much you can sharpen your pencil, right, Matt? So now, post-pandemic, they ask the same question. Well, how has your perspective changed now, going through the pandemic? And a couple of really interesting data points. There was a massive acceleration in a couple of the areas that John talks about in the article. One was cybersecurity, right? A mass, like 24 times faster, they adopted more enhanced cybersecurity than they would have before the pandemic. Another area was cloud migration. So John talks about storage and all that. So moving toward the cloud. And the last one was hybrid workforce optimization and support, right? Work from home and that kind of thing. So these business owners said, well, now we see IT much more strategically. And in fact, 47% of them said they now see IT so strategically that they are now taking a technology-first approach to looking at the value of IT, and only 10% now say that they are still perceiving it as an opportunity to cut costs. So we have, the pandemic and COVID-19 and all that horrible things happened, but it did accelerate and change the minds of these buyers today that, channel pros and MSPs and IT providers now can take advantage of and pivot their positioning of their solutions and portfolios, including security, storage, and data center services, to appeal to what today's post-pandemic decision makers are investing in. So I think it's a really timely article.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head too, especially for the SMB space, especially when you start to think of the smaller businesses and customers that they work with, where IT was probably historically often viewed as like an expense or kind of a must-have thing, or but not something that was like going to be pivotal to their growth. And I think now a lot of those, especially as you get smaller and smaller, probably have a much different mindset about technology now, as it was crucial in order to keep the doors open and the lights on, as workforces had to work remotely in a lot of cases or whatnot. So a really timely article. I agree. A really good time to sit down with your customers and look at these areas in particular and look at the opportunities that you can help them grow and make their solutions better and more competitive by focusing on these areas. So good stuff there. Lots in the article to touch on. We'll have the link to this one in the show sheet as well, so you can go and give that a read. And then the other one that I know we want to touch on real quick before we go, and this is another one we're not going to spend a lot of time diving too deep in, because there's a lot in here and it's really complex, but it's an important thing. So Erica, I'm sure you remember document migrations back in the day of working with your customers, and how those despite how much advancements in technology we've had over the years, document migrations can get out of hand really quickly and be a big problem, right? So there's an article that hit the site by Stacy Farrar that talks about proper planning, using the right tools, and things you need to think about when getting into a document migration, so that way it will be something that is successful. So Eric, we can touch on a couple of the things that it touches on in the article here, but one is like not underestimating the scope of of the work and all of the things that you got to think about in terms of not just necessarily the quantity of documents that you might have to do in a migration, but also the nature of the data and how the documents are structured, where they're located, who's allowed access, and the process for permissions, and I mean, that's a lot of stuff right there. And there's even more to think about, but that's just the part of it. Educating end users, and then, having your customers understand the whole process of like what's going to happen in the migration, and then an honest evaluation of associated costs. And I think that last one is where Eric, I think a lot of people, a lot of MSPs may not put a lot of thought into, but you have to be able to figure out what the costs on that are. And any thoughts here on this article? Any points that you want to highlight?
Oh yeah, no, Stacy does a really good job of kind of breaking down a little bit of the, of the process management considerations that you have to have going into this. And, the other point he touches on toward the end of the article is choosing the right tool to help with the migration. I mean, I remember, just not being aware of the tools that were out there to help us do these types of migrations, in my IT practice. And it was more of a, we do it the old school way. We do it manually, a lot of manual labor and things like that. And, you talk about creating frustration and opportunities for disaster to happen when you're relying on, human beings to do things manually. I mean, it's, I got to say, I've had enough, scares trying to do things the old way until I figured out how to do things in a very meticulous, documented, checklist-based, process, and leveraging the right tools, and not just the right tools in the process, but reaching out and partnering with our great strategic vendor partners because they can help, and some of us, sometimes overlook that. I mean, even, connecting with our distributor partners and, having them connect us with some of their internal teams that can help with these big, migrations. I mean, some of these workloads are massive, and, how to phase that out properly and how to make sure that we're not disrupting the continuity of the client as well, right? So there are things that engineers, sometimes we forget to think about, the customer experience, we just go at it, and all of a sudden, we learn real fast when they're unsatisfied with some ways that we've done some things, and we have to adjust that way. So I like the way that Stacy has kind of laid out kind of the use case and kind of how to think about these things, and gives us some guidance there.
Absolutely. And it's well worth the read. Lots of really good advice in here, as Eric was pointing out. So make sure you go and you check out this particular article, especially if you end up doing a lot of document migrations. You could probably do them better. And this article might help you do just that. With that is all the stories that we're going to touch on this week. Whew, glad we got that out of the way. Rich he's so polished when he does this, and I just get nervous when I have to try and pick out all the little details. He just does such a good job at that. So kudos to Rich, and he'll be back next week to pick up the reins, and I can go back to trying to be a goofball, which is what I do best over here at ChannelPro Weekly.
Yeah, we're thinking about Rich, but I hope, Rich, you're not thinking about us right now. So enjoy your time off, brother.
I agree. He needs the break. Speaking of breaks, we're going to take one of those, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Jeff O'Hare, the new event content director and community manager here at ChannelPro. You will want to meet this guy because he's doing some really cool stuff around our events, which you want, but it's also really cool stuff with our audience around these what we're calling action councils that he's kind of setting up all over the country. That is absolutely something you might want to be a part of. So you will want to learn more about what he's doing there. And he's just a really interesting guy to talk to, and has a lot. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of great stories. So you're in for a treat. Stick around. We'll be right back. Are you an MSP who is recommending Dell hardware to your end users? If so, then you'll want to check out the Dell Expert Network. The new Dell Expert Network program is a rewards and incentives program designed for service-focused MSPs who are supporting the small business market. This program is designed to deliver value and save time for MSPs who are recommending their end users to purchase Dell hardware. Currently, Dell Expert Network customers get an additional 3% back in Dell rewards when they buy Microsoft servers. Check out the Dell Expert Network today. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. While the ChannelPro Network has grown its audience in print and online since its inception, its efforts in putting on educational, high-value regional events started in 2012. And it's remarkable how it's grown over the past decade. From a single regional event to today, a combination of 6 regional and multiple virtual events every year. If you've attended any of the events this year, you'll have seen Jeff O'Hare, our new event content director and community manager. He's here today to give us the opportunity to learn a little bit more about him and about some of the fascinating work he's doing with the ChannelPro audience. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Matt.
It's great. Yeah, it's great to have you here. Erick Simpson's still with us here after the break. Always awesome to have him on. Jeff, let's go ahead and start with you. Tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Well, let's see. I got into the channel. Oh, God, it was back in, it must have been 95. I was working as a daily reporter out in Staten Island, and I had an editor who went over to something called CRN for CMP Media. And he said, Jeff, you got to come over, because I had been covering crime, in which I loved. Crime on Staten Island back then was it was happening. But then I shifted to business, and I also liked that. So the editor said, come on over. It's all about the IT, high tech. And so after hemming and hawing, I knew it was time for a change. So I went over there, and I had to cover something called the channel. And I'm like, what is this channel? And I remember going back to Staten Island to see my pals after I think I was on the job for about a week. I said, I'm not going to be there for another week because I can't get this whole thing. It's such a weird concept. So needless to say, I was there for 11 years. But back it up a little bit. When I interviewed for the job, a lot of people out there will know Bob DiMaso, who's now with Channel Partners. I'm running the conferences over there. He interviewed me. He's looking at my resume. He said, oh, you're a crime reporter. I said, yeah. He said, Jeff, get used to it. You'll never cover crime again. Well, it just happened. It was like I don't think it was 6 months later. It was right. I got a call. I don't know if it was Christmas Day or right after. And he's like, guess what, Jeff? You're back on the crime beat. It just so happened that I was covering distribution at the time. And there's a company called Access Graphics out in Boulder, Colorado. And their CEO was John Ramsey. And that was when, John Benet Ramsey's daughter was found dead in the house. So I had to pack up real quick and head over to Boulder to cover that. And that was kind of amazing. So yeah, we were the first ones to get in to talk to John Ramsey at the company. They gave us access to the company, which kind of shows, the power of those connections that you build up. And I think everybody was surprised that we actually got in. We actually got the first and only interview with John Ramsey too. And that was almost, that may have been like 6 months after. It's the summertime. So it was about 6 months after that whole thing happened. So needless to say, it just showed how I was a little bit short-sighted in the beginning, saying I wouldn't last a week, because there's just so many different things to do, and it was something the trades back then, as they are now, the trade magazines, trade publications, it was at the birth of the internet. So we made it up as we went along, and you could kind of do whatever you wanted to do, which wasn't always the case in daily newspapers because they were still a little bit behind the technology curve. So while at CRN, we talk about all these great shows coming up that we're putting on. That's one of the reasons I was brought over to ChannelPro by Jay-Z, Joel Zaid-Springer, who everybody knows out there as the mayor of the channel. And I work with him at CMP on the exchange conferences that CRN would put on. So I was on stage a lot. We were doing CRN radio. It was, we call it podcast today, and everybody has one. It was one of the first live radio shows, internet radio shows out there back then. That must have been around 97. So, so many different opportunities that the channel did offer me. And I took advantage of each and every one. You hear all the phrases today coming out of the colleges and the career mentors for the young kids getting out of the pandemic and getting back in the workforce and that type of thing. They're always saying, raise your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand. You got to step up to different things. And that's kind of what, working in the IT trades in the channel did offer me. You just raise your hand, and the next day you'd be in Boulder, the next, covering a murder. The next day you'd be at some of the biggest trade shows in the country or interviewing some of the biggest executives in business, not just IT, but in business. We had access to Balmer and Gates, in Parmisano at IBM, and all the big wigs. But despite that, I always think, and I always, and I believe the most interesting people I always talked to was always kind of the back then we called them solution providers, those guys in the trenches really, implementing the technology, knowing their vendor partners, the goods and the bads, and of course, not being able to share that information too with the press, because that was very important to kind of break down those ivory towers and let the vendors know what was really going on when sometimes they didn't realize it. So yeah, it was, and then, so that was a lot of fun. It was real interesting. I ended up running a consumer trade. I went over to the consumer technology area for a while, ran a magazine out there, and got laid off like a lot of people in media in 2014. Covered a lot of different things. I was actually a food reporter at Yahoo, which was fascinating. And then I got into covering mechanical engineering and all different aspects of engineering. Again, it's one of those things you kind of raise your hand and you do it. I can barely add, but you're a good journalist. You have, the basics, those who, what, when, where, why, know the audience, know the focus you're going after. And you can pretty much write about anything with the right resources. And of course, now with the internet, many of those resources are right at your fingertips, but you need the subject matters, those MSP, those engineers or whoever to really talk about it and bring what can be esoteric or kind of complicated material to life. So after that, here I am at ChannelPro doing my thing.
Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you ended up here, but that is really fascinating, Eric. I can't imagine writing about crimes and murders and blood and guts and grisly stuff, and then be like, "Hey, I'm really fascinated by the IT channel." That's a big change.
It was a big change.
Yeah, I pulled two things from that. I try to focus on a couple things, and one thing was, you made a point, Jeff, about, having those connections as that, reporter, that beat reporter, having the connections, getting you. Those connections actually served you well in the IT channel as well. I mean, you dropped, Bobby D and Jay-Z's name and, these connections, so that's, I think there's a parallel there. And then the other thing that I just started to, to realize as you were telling about sharing your journey here is, you were covering the IT channel, in my opinion, in probably one of the most rapid evolutionary time periods that we have seen up to that time, right? So, having access to these, brilliant thought leaders and business leaders, and being kind of that fly on the wall, watching as we march through. I mean, I can't even imagine how many versions of Microsoft Windows, you covered during that time, and, Mac OS and all this. I mean, you were right there at the heart of all of this, rapid evolution of technology. Must have been, pretty exciting now that you reflect back on it. Back then, I'm sure you were just like, tired just from covering everything, right?
Yeah. It was still exciting though, because like you said, it was happening so fast. And you got to the point where there was so many new players coming on too. So that always made it interesting. And like today, the solutions providers back then, they would challenge with so many different things. It was a big money maker because everybody was going over from, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 8-bit to 16-bit computing right after Windows 95 was launched. And I think I got to CRN right around 96, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 96. So there was a huge influx of business in money, and margins were high on the hardware. Real quick story. We used to print, and to show how much things have changed, going into Comdex, the big trade show that used to happen in Vegas. I remember our issue for Comdex, 286 pages for the magazine, and I think every other page is an advertisement. The printing company couldn't bind more pages to the magazine. They maxed out at 286. It was like a phone book. So we had to print a second magazine for that show. It was 186 pages. So that was just full of all, the different technologies that were coming out and that type of thing. But then it was only, talk about quick change. It was only, 4 years later when the internet bubble happened and all the margins, even before 2000, started to fall out of that hardware. And I remember, I think it was Jeff McKeever over at MicroAge at the time. Early on, he said, there's going to be a point, and people thought it was crazy, where all of the solution providers will be shifting to services. And practically, I know it's not necessarily the case now, but practically giving the hardware away for free. And we definitely saw that shift, which we're up to now. So yeah, I kind of saw that full circle. And unfortunately, a lot of guys had to change quickly. But you see some of the solution providers out there now who, like yourself and others who were back there during the day, like Oli, I always mispronounce his name, to Dotson. Guys like that really adapted well and kind of embrace the change and realize it's do or die, right? You got to change with it and accept the new solutions that are out there and present them in the best way to the customer base, to the business base. And if you do that properly, you'll survive and you'll prosper. So yeah, despite all those changes, it's all about changing, right? Whether you're journalism, whether you're in the MSP, anything like that. Once that internet hit and throughout the years, it's a matter of change and being able to adapt. So, and that's what we hope to help people do, having people like you, Eric, come on the show and what we do at ChannelPro every day with our live events and the publications online. We're always trying to do that. So that's what makes it kind of exciting, So.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And having that go-giver mentality, right? We're all here. We're more like a community than anything else, right? That's what's really cool and exciting about, what we get to do every day, and gets us going. You brought back, sometimes painful memories for me, Jeff, talking about the switch from 8-bit to 16-bit. I mean, I remember one of my projects in the enterprise was, going from, token ring, network, and Novell to, Cat 5 and Windows, going from DOS and Windows 3.1 to, networking, with Windows 95 and all of that. And, just switching the hardware from these old cows and mouse to actual switches and that whole evolution. When we were discovering, that was the big paradigm shift, then. So, those were heady days, and look, for me, I was actually in the enterprise during a lot of that, and then decided to jump out, and provide service as kind of a reseller of VAR, a provider out there, just, helping businesses at the early stage of, true networking that came down from, enterprise that was now available to the SMB business owner, right? We were putting in switches, and things like that. And the early days of the internet, seeing email, just become what it is today, a critical business application, right? I remember installing Microsoft Office with, remind me, Matt, was it 43 floppy disks? I can't remember. And it was always disk 38 that was corrupted. You get all the way through swapping all those disks for an hour and a half or more, and there's a problem with disk 38. But anyway, it was
a lot of floppy disks.
Yeah,
just shipping that must have been expensive. Let's also not overlook the glory of Windows OSs, which was Windows 3.11 for work groups, right? That was where it was all getting started.
Yeah. Yep. We were moving off of, and all those networking protocols that it used to support. Remember, IPS, SBX, NetBEUI was in there. We had a list of different protocols that those early, operating systems were supporting from a networking perspective. Novell was in there. Banyan Vines was in there. Remember that? Holy cow! Yeah. Now I'm really hearkening back. Now I'm really throwing back.
we could drone on about legacy hardware and OSs all day because there's nothing I love to talk about more than that. But we do want to talk a little bit more about Jeff. So Jeff, real quick, you kind of talked about your background, what you were doing before, and that was really, really fascinating stuff. How did you kind of end up at ChannelPro though? Like, was there a conversation? Did you bump into somebody? Just a quick 1, 2, 3 on how you ended up here.
Well, I was ready to get back. I was ready to get back to a full-time work. I spent some time with my kids, and I reached for my phone. Jay-Z and I had always kept in touch over the years. We were kind of tight back to the CMP days. So I was about to check out, what was going on out there. I picked up my phone and was about to dial Jay-Z, and who came up ringing? It was Jay-Z, saying, we got this opportunity over here. You want to interview for it? So it was like a message from Mana, if you will. I was just about to call him and the phone rang and it was him. So it was time to get back. And, one of the things, if I was going to get back in the channel, I always wanted that event component because I do love to go out there, especially now when so many people are working remotely. I really wanted to get back out there and, to meet the people, talk to them and put on the shows and, just get out there and do the networking and make the connections. So that's how I ended up here. It was that event component. And after doing so many things that I was kind of thrown into over the years that I had no idea how to do in new environments and new groups of people and new, areas of coverage, I was kind of ready to get back to something just a little bit familiar for, kind of my next go round. And Jay-Z happened to be calling. So I answered.
Very cool. So let's talk about that real quick. So tell us about your first couple weeks on the job. I like most that join our team. There's a lot. There's a lot you have to ramp up on really fast. So what was it like?
First things for all the managers out there, just remember how difficult it is to onboard to begin with, to bring somebody new in. But now with remote, I think that makes it kind of twice as hard because you're not bumping into somebody in the hallway to ask a quick question to. You don't have that immediate access necessarily to people. So we all, as managers, we all have to keep that in mind. So, the onboarding coming in during the, when everybody's remote now, right? That was a little challenging. So we're all getting used to each other now. And of course it's getting better, but, just to the managers out there, that's always something to keep in mind, to keep your people engaged and to make them still feel like, part of a team. And that's why it's so great to have these online events because you do get out there and you do meet the team. So, the first couple weeks, it's like, all right, you got to do, this is what you have to do. It's building up, trying to build up the audience for the next show. Coming up with some ideas. You guys already had some great ideas, but it was a matter of, kind of honing and fine tuning those presentations. Particularly, we do one called the MSP Survivor Challenge, which is very cool. And then the employee recruitment dating game, which is also very cool. So it was coming up to speed on that. And then, kind of getting over the nerves to do a live show again. I hadn't been on stage in probably, it's been a good, it's almost been 10 years. So, and that wasn't in the IT channel. That was more the consumer technology. So, it was just getting used to that and getting over the, the nerves. And Matt, I remember our first show in Newark, it was like, I don't think I slept for 3 nights before that. It's like, we got to practice. We got to do this. We got to do that. But, it turned out well. And the great thing about, doing, that first show in Newark which was back in March, was the enthusiasm of the crowd. Nobody expected as many people to show up as they did for the SMB forum that we held in Newark. That was right before St. Patty's Day. I think it was like the 4th of March. And things are still shaky, with COVID and everything. But we had a great turnout, and everybody there said, it's those who hadn't started traveling yet. It's just great to get out. It's great to start meeting people. And it's great to hear the new content live, which isn't something we can always do back in the office, even through webinars. There's a dynamic that happens with a live event that you just can't get, although the webinars are fantastic and they get better every week, because people are learning how to, put on more kind of dynamic webinars. But there's nothing that can kind of replace that live show. We have all these, you meet your old connections, you reacquainting yourself, and you meet new ones. And that's how ideas get shared, and that's how partnerships are formed. It's just something that can be done online and through LinkedIn and social and all that, but it just doesn't match that live event. And that's one of the biggest, most important feedbacks we had coming back, getting back in the show. So, it was the first week, or the first 2 weeks, it was just preparing, for that show. And then my duties are also to call all the MSPs, to go through our lists and give them a shout and talk up the show and, ask them if they're going and, what we can do to make the whole process, smoother, whatever it takes to make their experience better. So, we got great registration and great attendance, I should say, for Newark. And then we hit Chicago, I think that was a month or so. Well, that was just a couple of weeks ago. That was our second show, probably about 3 weeks ago. And we blew the numbers out of the water because I think people were talking about it. We've got a lot of good feedback online, which of course is the lesson of the day is, you do something, you do something bad, you get a ton of complaints. You do something good nowadays, you get a ton of congratulations. And, that feeds everything, people is building up those networks and, sharing all the good news that's documented and people saw what was going on out there. So the vendors who come to support our shows, they get excited about it. And then the MSPs who attend, they do too. And everybody just starts talking about and sharing what they're learning at the next show. Because Eric, as you know, back in the day, God, maybe there was a handful of shows a year, CMP Exchange was one of them. Then you had the handful of good big vendor shows, and you had Comdex. Today, seems like there's a show every week. So the word spreads, it makes the competition tighter. So you got to up your game as much as you can as far as the content goes, as far as the whole experience goes for these live events, which is good. That competition is good. But with that said, the MSP, their time is tighter than ever. So it makes us, my first 2 weeks, my first couple months, I've only been here since January. I think every day we're kind of planning on how to make the experience better. Whether it's from in the seats in the MSP perspective or from the stage and what we're actually delivering in terms of the information in a fun, informative, and exciting way, And with that said, thank God for the MSPs who are helping us out. We got a ton helping us out. So, my first couple of weeks was touching base with a bunch of them also. And they're just into it. And I think to myself, some of these MSPs are locked in not locked in, but we're not locking them in, but they've agreed to do our shows for, consecutively. And just the fact that they're taking their time out of their busy day and away from their growing businesses, it's just kind of a testament to the whole ChannelPro kind of legacy that they built up. So that's important. It's important. It's an important thing to God, and it's an important thing to, protect and keep, and to perpetuate. So those are kind of how my days are spent, doing all those different things. So.
You touched a lot about your first, couple of weeks, and you mentioned we did kind of throw you to the wolves for the Newark show because you were still very, very green and kind of a nervous wreck. Do you want to elaborate on that just a little bit?
Matt, I wasn't a nervous wreck. I just want, you just want everything to go as smoothly as possible. And that's how some people prepare for these things, just by, funny. I'll tell this story because I know Bobby D, we mentioned Bob DiMaggio always did. So I started out, when I started to Gaffigan, I was a lot more nervous in the early days of CMP. When I first started to do the trade shows, the events, and oh man, my hands would shake. And so Bob D is like the smoothest guy out there, right? He comes across like not a care in the world. He's engaging. He's fantastic. I said, how can you be so comfortable? We're about to go out to like a crowd of, hundreds and hundreds with all the big wigs up in front. Said, how you don't get nervous? He said, well, I do. I get sick before every show. Every time I go out to speak, you just get over it and you go out there, you get those nerves out. And to hear him say that, it's like, oh, all right. So it kind of affects everybody, the butterflies, but like he said, you get over it, or you learn to get over it. So, I wouldn't say I was a nervous wreck, but that's energy, Matt. That's adrenaline coming through. And you want everything to go well. You're afraid you're going to forget your lines, this or that. And I always like to memorize things, which I kind of, as I get old, it's becoming a little bit harder. So I think you helped me out there. You said, Jeff, you don't have to memorize everything. It's like, well, and I remember I answered you. I said, how else do you do it? So you learn how to do it. So you're not, you don't get too stressed out about it. And as far as being green, well, it's not really being green. It's just, in front of, it's, the new material in front of new audience. And once I used to do a lot of that. So, you combine those things and you hope your nerves don't, you show your nerves behind the scenes. You hope they don't come out on the stage. So
and they didn't. No, you were really good. You were really good the first show out. Awesome stuff. Eric, you present a lot too. Do you have do you get nerves like that too? How do you get over it?
Just a couple of shots before I go on, and then just kind of even things out a little bit. No, I think it's what Jeff, you said so well. It's kind of that opening night jitter thing, right? And believe me, when I started speaking, I would lead teams, right, in the enterprise and work with lots of folks that I knew, but speaking to people that I didn't know, yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I think you just build up first, like you, Jeff, prepare, right? Make sure I don't screw this up. But then after a while, you kind of get into it. And then I think when you start letting your real personality kind of come through and start leaning more on that, when you're comfortable on the, on the subject and on what's supposed to be happening and all that, and stop taking it quite so seriously, right? So, and have a little more fun with it. I think that's when you begin to enjoy it. For me, that's when I start really enjoying it a lot more, when it's a little more spontaneous. I mean, I'll even look for things to screw up now, right? Because like you said, we're coming out strong now after the pandemic and all that. I know that MSPs were ready to come to live events. I know that the vendor sponsors were just, chomping at the bit to come out to these live events. So there was a lot, that this pent up wanting to do this stuff, and, having a little fun while we're doing this stuff is, I think, appreciated by everybody too. It's not so serious. We came through it, right? We came through that whole last 2 years. But yeah, just, I was joking about the shots. I only take one.
One shot and,
Matt, real quick story. I had one of those big events to do back in the day, and I finished up. We used to hire big comedians, like big names back then, to entertain during the events. And I don't follow that stuff, so I don't know who is who. So one night we had a big event, and the comedian was Jim Gaffigan. And this was years ago. It was before he got really big, and now he's huge. So anyway, I give my presentation. It was one of those things. There's all the big shots in the front seats, solution providers in the nosebleeds, of course. So everybody's cheering. When I was done, I knocked it out pretty well. I go backstage, and there's this guy standing there. I think he had red hair back then. He's kind of waiting to go on, and I figured, it must be the comedian. I don't know him, but he said, "Hey, he must have heard the applause." He said, "Hey, that was you out there?" I said, yeah, that was me. He said, that really sucked. he walks out and takes the stage. So you got to kind of be prepared for whatever. Those damn comedian. There was a comedian in the crowd.
Always. Well, we don't have a whole lot more time, Jeff, but I want to make sure we touch on the community manager side of what you're doing. This is what I think a lot of the listeners out there and viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, every button you see on YouTube, just hit them all and good things will happen. But you're doing a lot of work as a community manager on that I think would be very interesting. Something about what we're calling regional action councils. Can you tell us a little bit about what those are and what you're doing with those?
Yeah, we're in the process of building them up now. I waited till, I got a couple of shows under my belt so I could go out and meet, as many of the MSPs as possible. So what we're doing is the action councils, we're developing them in, specifically, all the different major regions of the country. We got the Northeast, Southwest. We got, I think California might be alone, but we got a bunch of these. And we're getting together, probably about a half dozen MSPs in each region, who we're looking to go to, provide us with more feedback and insights into what we're writing about online and in the monthly magazine, and to give us feedback and input and ideas for the different sessions we put on at our live events. Because, while Rich Freeman, who's the executive editor of the book, and Colleen Fry, she's the managing editor, and you know a lot of the issues out there, a lot of the players, but it always helps to get as many, trusted kind of advisors as possible, who can bring a different perspective than we might get from our, gilded perch. So we're looking to we're reaching out to see which MSPs would be willing to come in and help us out with those different things. And the purpose also is to, to build up a stable of contributors, to broaden and diversify, all the different types of opinion pieces that we have online and in the magazine, share their success stories. As most of our viewers know, every cover for the monthly magazine, we have a solution provider on there sharing a particular aspect of their business that may have posed a challenge, and they kind of outline how they overcame it. Different things like that. So, it's going to be a light lift. We're not asking much of them. What we're doing more so is just kind of opening up all the resources we have so that they can participate more to build up their brand, to build up their business's brand, and, become more successful at what they do. So, if ever there's a show in town that, in that area that we feel a lot of people go to, whether it's ours, whether it's somebody else's, we'll want to get them together, a night of dinner and drinks, just to touch base and make sure we're on the right track, to see how they want to participate more, what they have to contribute. It's kind of up to them to, take advantage of what we have to offer. So, the MSP audience will be hearing a lot more about that in the days to come. I think we've already, kind of targeted the MSPs in the New York, New Jersey area. We'll probably open that up a bit to Boston, Pennsylvania. And then Chicago, we'll be building that up next. And I have a list of MSPs in Chicago. There's a lot of good, strong ones out there that who have agreed to do it already. So I'll still look out there and touch base with them. Then I go to then we're heading down to Dallas. So we'll start building up Texas area and all those regions. Then, we'll just move across country and start getting these MSPs together. And then we can kind of decide how to go forward outside of the original plan. And it's kind of up to them, how do they want to present themselves? What type of information they want to get out there? So that's kind of the idea behind it. And that's exciting, when you have that. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. It seems like a good opportunity for a select few out there to kind of get the opportunity to be very involved and to have a big impact on some of the things that happens around the ChannelPro.
Oh, definitely. And to position themselves as, SMEs too. And like I said earlier, we already do it a lot in the magazine. You guys have done a great job. We just want more of them. And, even to, if something like Rich did such a great job covering the whole Datto Kaseya deal, if something like that breaks, it would be great to have, more MSPs who we could call quickly or who would be willing to comment and contribute on, breaking stories like that, or with all the best practice stories we do. If there's a particular trend that comes up and it happens to fall in their wheelhouse, or that's something they're passionate about, hey, send us, let's talk about your contributions. And with Colleen and Rich, their help, our editorial staff, they make it easy for these guys to, and women, these people to contribute to really get their voice and their expertise noted in the channel. And yeah, it does have an impact. It always has. So we just want to carry that forward and motivate and perpetuate that as much as possible. So yeah, there's going to be great things coming up. So
awesome stuff. Eric, I'll throw it to you for last word. If you have any comments you want to add or anything you want to ask Jeff.
Yeah, just curious. I mean, this is a great opportunity, what you just described, building out these, partner community that can help contribute, influence, want to do more to help other partners grow and all that. Jeff, if there were some interested MSPs that have a little extra time on their hands that want to maybe toss their hat into the ring to help with this initiative, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can always call me, and I'll say it slowly, at 516-477-2665. All my, all my contact information is on the ChannelPro site. It's Jeff@ChannelProNetwork.com, and they can reach out to me. And and again, it might take a little bit of time and formulating their stories, their thoughts and opinions, but it's really going to be as light a lift as we can make it, to make it as easy as possible. So yeah, give me a shout, shoot me an email, Jeff@ChannelProNetwork.com, and we'll talk.
Awesome. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I was hoping to be able to get a round of 5 questions in with you, but we'll just going to have you back on down the road to talk with us again, or have you guest host a whole episode with us, because I'm sure you got a lot to contribute as well. And also, you're putting together the action councils. I'm also putting together my own groups. I'm going to put together a Microsoft Plus for Windows 95 revival group and fan group. So we're going to be getting together with different groups all around the country, and we're going to be installing Microsoft Plus on modern versions of Windows to see if it will even install, and if it does, what it looks like. So keep your eye out. And I'm completely kidding. We're not doing that. That would just be it's going down into the rabbit hole of insanity. But we should think about that though, Eric. Maybe there is something we could do there on that.
That's a 3-shot opportunity. That one.
three shots and a bottle of pills in order to do that one. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you back on again. And good luck on the next event coming up in Dallas. I know I'll see you there.
Dallas, June 6th and 7th at the Courtyard Marriott DFW Airport in Grapevine. If you haven't registered yet, go to, ChannelProEvents.com. All the info will be up there. Again, shoot me an email if you have any questions, Jeff@ChannelProNetwork.com. I hope to see tons of MSPs there. It's going to be a great show, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. ChannelProForum.com/Dallas. That'll take you right to the registration page. Use promo code CPVIP. That will get you in the door for free. But believe me, you're going to get a lot out of it. So make sure if you're anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, make it a point to be there. You're going to get a lot out of it. I promise you that. And with that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Eric and I will be on the other side to close out the show and maybe have a little bit of fun in the process. You'll just have to stick around to see what happens. We'll be right back. And welcome back with part 3 of this episode of Channel Pro Weekly. Erick Simpson still with me here on the other side. Eric, great interview with Jeff. That was the first time you actually met him. What'd you think? Any cool highlights or takeaways from that interview?
Boy, just his life journey and everything he's seen. As we mentioned during the interview, and I expressed, I said, wow, he has been. In his journey, in his career, he's been around at some very pivotal points in the evolution of our industry. And it's just fascinating to hear, him share stories. And, somehow I get the feeling, Matt, I don't know about you, but I think, we could fill hours of him just telling stories.
He is a very, very interesting guy to listen to. And I've gotten a chance to get to know him a little bit over the last, 5 months that he's been around. We spent some time together at the events. And yeah, he's a fascinating guy. And he does also some really fascinating hobbies that we didn't get to talk about in this interview, but I'm sure he'll be back from time to time, and we will learn a little bit more about Jeff. And I think that would be a big treat for the audience as we go. So With that, one of the things that we did kind of talk about in the interview there is we had a little history about. We were talking about some of the things that we had in the industry, and we had a Windows 3.11 for work groups reference there. And I thought, Erick he's been in the industry a long time. He used to work with a lot of this stuff. I think we should put your knowledge of the history of Windows to the test.
Oh no, here we go. Okay.
So I have devised a series of questions to ask you. I was going to ask 5. I've got more if we have time. But I wanted to put your knowledge of Windows to the test. So every question I have here is kind of on the old school of Windows. So think Windows 95 and prior. Okay, from back in the day. So
okay.
Now, do you want to put something on the line, like a drink? Like if you get 5 right, like how confident are you in your abilities to answer these questions?
Let's just see how it goes, Matt. Hit me. Be gentle.
All right. Here we go. Windows history with Erick Simpson. True or false? Windows 95 originally shipped with Internet Explorer.
False.
That is correct. Do you know when Internet Explorer first appeared?
I would hazard a guess to say a year after the release of Windows 95. I can't remember exactly.
So interesting enough, I believe that Internet Explorer first appeared with Microsoft with the Plus pack for Windows 95, which I believe also was released around the same time, but it was not embedded into the OS. You had to get the Plus pack in order to get Internet Explorer.
Yeah, there was some, I think some competitive, questions or anti-competitive thing where you couldn't integrate it, at the start because it would disenfranchise some of the other big, browsers at the time, and there were some legal disputes going on. Later, it ended up being integrated right out the gate, right?
Yeah, I believe in Windows, the whatever the B version of Windows 95 ended up with
95B.
95B. That was a good one. All right. Next question. I guess I kind of lied. Some of these are a little bit past. So don't think 95 and before. Some of these are a little past. And that's, I guess, a clue. What was the first Windows version to support 64-bit computing?
I'm going to go with Windows 98.
Sorry. Windows XP Professional X64 Edition was the first. First Windows to support the x64 extensions that were originally written by AMD. It was who came up with those extensions. All right, that's okay. You're 1 for 2 so far. Let's see how we go. What was the first Windows version with overlapping application windows?
XP Pro.
Oh, no. We got to go way back. Oh, so just the ability for the windows to overlap.
The ability for Windows to overlap. Windows 3.11 for workgroups.
Sorry.
Dang
Windows, close though. Windows 2.0 was the first Windows shell where the windows could be resized and overlap each other.
Yeah, I don't think I ever worked with Windows 2.0. So
the funny thing is a lot of people didn't touch Windows until Windows 3. So that was usually a lot of people's first experience with Windows. But yeah, Windows 1, the first original Windows shell, the windows could be tiled, but they could not overlap, which was kind of an interesting thing.
All right. Well, I got to catch up now because that was a tough one.
That was a tough one. Some of these are not easy. All right. I think you'll get this one, though. What was the first Windows version suitable for integrated networking?
Windows 3.11 for workgroups.
I'm going to give you half credit, though.
Oh, no, 3. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to give you half credit because there was a Windows for Workgroups 3.1, which came
3.1,
which came out before 0.11, which was like a year or so prior. But a lot of people forget about 3.1 because nobody used it.
There you go. All right.
So, yeah, that was the first one. That's okay though. Half credit. All right, we've got 3 more where these are going fast, so we'll just get to them all. System Restore. a feature that's oft used, first debuted in what edition of Windows?
System restore. Windows XP.
Sorry. Actually, System Restore first debuted in Windows Me. Windows Millennium Edition was the first version of Windows to have System Restore that nobody used and everybody hated. But a pivotal feature that definitely rolled into XP and was oft used after that. Everybody likes to forget about Windows Me, but it actually had, believe it or not, though, it actually had a lot of the first time a lot of major features in Windows made their debut in Windows Me, believe it or not. So too bad it was just buggy as heck and crashed all the time. All right, let's see what here. I'll say, I'm going to save that one for last. We'll do the last desktop Windows version question. Microsoft has a long history of bundling games with Windows. What were the 2 games included in Microsoft Windows 3.0?
Oh, man. I'm going to have to go with Solitaire and Minesweeper.
I'll give you half credit. Solitaire did make its debut in Windows 3. But the other game in Windows 3 was Reverse Eye.
Oh, Reverse Eye. I've never even opened that game.
Yeah, which only was in Windows for Windows 1, 2, and 3, and then was removed in Windows 3.1 in favor of Minesweeper, and I was doing the research on this one, and I had 1 or 2 others. But you're right. Solitaire first debuted in Windows 3. And the other one was Reverse Eye, or however you want to pronounce it. All right, last question. I'll give you a double credit for this one. We'll see if we can end up halfway. What was the last version of Windows Mobile?
You got me. I have no idea. I don't know Windows Mobile at all. They never used it, never supported it. Windows Mobile. I don't even know what the different versions were.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. Well, so for those out there who want to take a guess, I'll let you say your answer to yourself. And it was indeed Windows Mobile 6.5. 6.5 was the last version of Windows Mobile. Not a lot of devices came out with that one because shortly after that, Microsoft announced Windows Phone 7 series. And then Windows 6.5 kind of got tossed to the side with the rest of the Pocket PC existence. But you never use Windows Mobile at all?
Yeah, maybe, but not, I was fighting all the mobile transition. We would not allow clients to have mobile phones and support them, even the early iPhones. And we just thought it was too much of a security risk. Now later, of course, we support everything now, right? Because you are untethered from any device. I mean, as we're seeing the migration to the cloud and all that, even Microsoft is creating Windows apps and the Windows operating system. Everything will be apps that we can use ubiquitously across any device, whether, in my opinion, whether that's a browser on a desktop, a tablet, your phone, who knows? That's where we're going. So, it's a whole different ball game nowadays, right, Matt?
Sure is. You didn't use any of the old smartphone platforms back in the day, or like Pocket PC or Palm? Did you ever have a Palm Pilot? None of those?
I think I used a Palm Pilot for a bit. Maybe we had a Pocket PC, but it certainly wasn't something that I would, rely on to do work with. It was more of a, a little messaging thing, I'm just like a dinosaur. Like I hated texting. I hated all that. I still have like a old little mobile StarTAC flip phone over here. Remember the T9 stuff? That was horrible. But yeah, it was, I was more of a desktop and server. I gotta have my desktop and servers, and that's what we supported with our clients. And boy, how we've evolved so far beyond that, right?
Oh, for sure. I used a Windows Mobile phone for several years back in the day. Wasn't really the greatest experience in the world, but it was nice for texting, and it had a really good email client, and it synced with Outlook, because I've been using Outlook for just like forever, like a lot of people, and it was just really nice having my calendar kind of sync across.
Yeah, I remember those early phones, and you know the battery would last for days on those things. What happened? Now, now you got to charge your phone every 6 hours sometimes. But anyway,
I know. It certainly seems that way. But I did like my Windows Mobile. I never got to use the phone with 6.5. But my last version I used was 6.1, and it was okay. But obviously, the iPhone came along right after that in 2007 and kind of shook up the world. Not in terms of apps, that didn't come for the iPhone later, but until like the second or third version of the iPhone. But I like that. Anyway, we'll maybe I think I did my Windows Mobile 6.1 phone as a pick a long time ago. I'll look up when that was. If you want to learn more about my Windows Mobile 6 phone, it was in episode. I know we got a. I don't know. We'll have to find it. Well, you know what? Tune in next week. I'll see if I can figure out where what episode I talked about that particular Windows mobile phone, because my search isn't coming up, so I'm not really sure. But that's wait. Maybe I got it. No. I talked about an HP iPack in episode. I know I think Eric's got to go because we're running out of time. So Eric, why don't we? We'll figure that out next week. Tune in next week, folks. We'll figure out when we're going to do that. So first of all, we don't have an in case you missed a pick this week or a preview of the week ahead. But I can preview one thing. Next week, Rich will be back and we'll have a show, and he'll be able to tell you all the stuff that we missed and all the stuff that's coming up ahead. But at first, I want to give a big thanks to Erick Simpson for coming on and joining and co-hosting this with me here today in Rich's absence. I hope you had fun.
Had fun. You killed me on some of those Windows questions. I struggled there, but no, lots of fun, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Some of those were not easy. I'm not going to lie.
If you would have gone into more of the networking of the early Windows and stuff like that, I probably could have been. But the versions and things like that, yep. I mean, hats off to the channel pros that knew the answers, right? So that's pretty hardcore there. I'm removed from that world now a little bit, so
I'm sure you're happy about that for sure. So Eric, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, get a hold of you, network with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Oh, they can find me at ericksimpson.com, ERICK Simpson.com. You can email me at Erick, ERICK at ericksimpson.com.
Awesome. And for those who want to learn about that Windows Mobile 6 phone, episode 186 is when we talk about that and my museum pick there. So go and check that out. I finally had a search that worked and found it. So with that, again, big thanks to Erick Simpson. And we will see everybody in episode 227 next week. See you then.